This episode brought to you by Nomadic Research, built for the wild and forged in adversity. Somewhere between the front lines and the firelight, a vision was born. The founders of Nomadic Research spent years in the harshest environments on Earth, where grit and resilience weren't just words, but a way of life. They saw a need for gear that could handle anything, gear that wasn't just built, but built to last. From battlefields to backcountry trails, every piece of Nomadic Research gear is designed with one mission: unyielding performance for those who refuse to quit. The founders believe in patriotism, personal responsibility, and the freedom of the great outdoors, because adventure isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Born in the heart of Afghanistan, forged in adversity, and built for the wild, Nomadic Research is gear for those who go further. You can start your adventure at nomadicresearch.com. Hey guys, welcome back to the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. This week in the studio, imagine being shot 14 times in under 5 seconds and surviving. Left for dead, bleeding for nearly 3 hours, one man refused to quit. He isn't just a former elite cop, he's a living testament to what happens when resilience meets unbreakable will. This is a story of a man who redefined survival and now teaches the world how to thrive under pressure. Please welcome into the studio, Derrick McManus. What's going on, my friend?
Everything's going on. Absolutely everything. Despite the story you've just given, life is exceptional. Even today, having gone through all that, I've still got injuries and ailments that I deal with. Life is exceptional.
That's good to hear, because guys like you are rare, especially with the injuries that you sustained and how you sustain them. Just to thrive after that is just an amazing story, and I'm so glad you're on here. We got hooked up through a mutual friend of ours, and I'm so glad that you're on here. Let's start out this conversation by just talking about, like we always do, your childhood and what kind of pushed you into this life of service.
Yeah. We will probably touch on several embarrassing conversations in this conversation. And this is one of them. Why did I get into the police department? So, as a child, I was growing up and had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. But my brother is 2 years older than me, and my brother wanted to be a cop. And my brother, 2 years older than me, is my hero, right? Growing up, I just idolized my brother. Anything my brother did, I wanted to do. And I don't know what age it was, but my brother's gone, I want to be a police officer. And Derrick's gone, bang, I want to be a police officer too. And my whole family are going, you only want to be a police officer because Brian wants to be a police officer. And I've gone, no, no, no. Yeah, he wants to, but I love it as well. Well, my brother changed his mind and he became a butcher. And I couldn't change my mind because that would have proved the whole family right. And so I ended up being a copper because my brother wanted to but backed out. That doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy what I was doing, but I look at it now and whatever I do it well. And I'm going to be absolutely focused and do the best I can. But I also know it wasn't a passion. There are a lot of other coppers that eat, breathe, sleep, drink policing, and they know everything about it. I knew lots about it, but I didn't embed myself in the culture. And this has actually turned out to be a really good thing for me. And we'll cover that later. I was embedded in being a great cop, but I also had a life outside of policing, which gave me a really good perspective on being a police officer and including all of life as well.
Well, other than your brother, did you have anyone in law enforcement in your family?
Not a soul. And I came from a part of town where police were not popular. So, if I was to say at high school that I wanted to be a police officer, I probably would have got bashed.
I think that's pretty much everywhere these days. No matter where you're from, I think that if you tell people that, it's a little different though, from what I understand. The Australian police, and I guess maybe more directly the South Australian police, work not only as police officers, but they kind of work in a military role as anti-terrorism. Is that correct?
So we've got several different types of police under the policing banner. You've got the police who do the general duties. you've got detectives, you've got people who work on horses, you've got people who work in media sections of the police. And what you're talking about is the section I went into, and we call ourselves the STAR Group, and that's Special Task and Rescue. We train with the military elite SAS, Special Air Services. And so that's the equivalent to your Navy SEALs or your Delta Force and your Marines. So I trained with those guys and brought those skills back to policing. And I had skills of a sniper, underwater recovery, tactical diver, and counter-terrorism as well. But in South Australia, we have an even broader perspective than the other states because we also did VIP security, helicopter operations, cave rescue, cliff rescue, mine rescue. So when the Queen came to visit South Australia, I was part of the close quarter protection for the Queen and other VIPs and Prime Ministers and those sorts of things. Jumping in and out of the helicopters, either for high risk deployment into hot areas where offenders are, or into cliff rescue, cave rescue type stuff as well. So we had a really, really broad perspective.
Well, let's start kind of at the beginning of your career because you know you can't go directly to that. So let's talk
No.
about you serving just in regular patrol and kind of what your perspective was when you hit it. Because, like we talked about in the very beginning, you know, you did this first off because you saw your brother doing it, and then he backed out of it, and you did it. So when you become a police officer, what are those feelings, emotions the first time you're out there actually becoming what you wanted to be?
To be quite honest, I was overwhelmed when I first hit the road as a graduated police officer. So my training was a 3 year long training course. It's no longer, it doesn't do that anymore. It's either a 6 month or a 12 month these days. But mine was a 3 year training course. I started my training course when I was 17. I graduated at the age of 20 and went onto the road. And at the age of 20, after 3 years of training, they expect you to go out there and be fully operational. Now, I can tell you the first car that we pulled over for me to talk to the driver for a traffic infringement, the driver got away from me because I got caught in traffic. I was too scared to pull them over. I found a way to get myself caught in traffic so that they could get away. So that's how confident I was. And that's not an unusual thing for police officers coming out. So, you know, we worked with good senior partners, and eventually, you know, the second traffic stop that we saw, you know, I've gone, okay, well, I've got to go through this. And so, you know, went through those phases. Um, and in my early career, I moved around a fair bit, either in the cars, walking the beat. I did a little bit of work in the country where I was working with partners and then working on my own. This is a few years into policing. And I got to the point where I was very, very confident and a reasonably good operator. And that's when I said, oh, and just reflecting on where I was and what I was thinking, I actually got to a point in my career where I was a good operator, but I got bored of the police because it wasn't a passion for me. So I got bored and I've gone, do you know something? This is okay, but I want to have something more in my life. I want to have something where I'm absolutely dedicated to it and I love it and I want to push myself. I didn't know those words at the time, but I just knew that the police wasn't fulfilling me. And so this is how old I was. There was no Seek in my day. I had to go and buy the newspaper and look at the printed ads to see if I could find a job. And I was looking through the newspaper and people are coming to me and saying, why don't you become a detective? Why don't you go here? And somebody said to me, why don't you join Star Group? And I've gone, do you know something? It sounds like it would be fun. You know, counter-terrorism, high-risk arrest, hostage siege, uh, climbing down the side of buildings and cliffs and going camping and all that sort of stuff. It sounds like it would be fun. I knew there were risks involved, but I thought to myself, it sounds like it'd be great fun as well as risks, stepping up to a higher level of leadership, higher level of problem solving. It sounds like it was appealing to me. And I said, well, I might as well go and do that while I am finding out what I want to do. So getting into Star Group is not something you do just, well, I think I'll go there and I go. There is a selection, and it's the same selection for Marines, Delta Force, whatever it might be. Ours is not as intense as theirs, but it's the same processes because we are going into essentially the same environments in a policing world where they're doing it in a militaristic world. So our selection process is something you have to prepare for and you have to be absolutely dedicated for. So I trained and I trained hard for that. I passed it on my first selection. Most people go through two selections, maybe three. There's about 30% of people that do it on their first selection. So I was partly fortunate, but I worked hard to get there. And when I got into Star Group, I found my place in the world. It fulfilled everything that I'd ever wanted. It was challenging. It was problem solving. It was stepping up to leadership. It was making decisions under pressure. It was, and as well as it was athletic. And don't get me wrong, there was a hell of a lot of adrenaline there. I may be an adrenaline junkie, but it gave me all those things. So it was my thing. And I found it because I chased something that was of interest to me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask was, I mean, you never saw this in your past growing up. You never saw that kind of excitement and stuff like that. I wonder what it was that unlocked that in you. I mean, was it just the sheer boredom of what you were doing that you took this whole new avenue? Because, I mean, according to you, you were very bored in your police work.
Yeah, absolutely. I had enjoyed my police work. Um, but I had got to a point where, I've done this a lot. And as much as every day is challenging, but it was a challenge that was repetitive. And, we went to brawls and we went to domestic disputes and we went to children who'd been run over by trains. And, the cliche statement these days is, oh my God, that's terrible. But when you really look at it, that was a Tuesday. And then you have a Wednesday, which is full of other things, because it was just that repetitive cycle. And there was nothing new and nothing extra challenging for me. And I was looking for that, something that I could get my teeth into and be passionate about. Um, and when I couldn't find that, somebody said, try this. And I've just gone, do you know something that will fulfill different parts of me? Like as I was growing up, I used to ride horses because that was a challenge. And I had my own Palomino stallion and, he'd rear up on his hind legs, when mares are going past and just like to show off. And I really, really loved the adrenaline that was associated with that sort of riding. I would go on canoeing expeditions down rivers that we hadn't been on before and just find out what it was like. So I liked that adrenaline. I liked that unknown. I liked stepping up to challenges. And Star Group was just that challenge that just fed me day in, day out. But there's no two ways about it. It eventually became another Tuesday because we were doing the same things over and over again. But then there was an opportunity to step up to the next level of leadership within the section, becoming a sergeant and supervising and directing and being the commander of operations and those sorts of things. So the challenges just kept on coming.
Do you ever think back, like what you just said is so it's so connecting to police work that even in what you were doing, it just becomes another Tuesday, and that could be good and bad for a couple different reasons. I think that you maybe get complacent,
Yeah.
and you start to think, this is just a normal thing, and then two, when you get bored, you you don't take as much enjoyment in it, and maybe you don't take it as I guess the word would be seriously as you should all the time, which I guess goes back to complacency. Can you tell about like your emotions when you feel that that's coming to an end, where it starts to become another Tuesday for you, and it's really a letdown? But how did you feel about it?
Um, and you're right. It, those situations can breed complacency and um, taking things less seriously, which, as you say, is complacency. Um, but it didn't in Star Group because everybody kept each other accountable. Um, And this is the operating at that next level higher, where if I took it as if I became complacent with what I was doing, that would reflect badly on not me, it would reflect badly on the section. Okay, and this is where your Marines, your Delta Force, your whatever else it is, um, everybody keeps everybody accountable. So that level of performance is always that next level high. Um, and police are proud of what they do, but if somebody underperforms, people sort of go, you should be a little bit better. If it happens in Star Group, you get hammered. The expectation is you will perform at the highest level. And so we keep our performance up there at that time, but it still becomes another Tuesday. And so you can go into things really well prepared, but very relaxed and not complacent. And I was reading a book and I can't remember the book, but once you become confident, you become relaxed. Once you become relaxed, you can get creative and you can see solutions that you don't see when you're going, oh my God, this is my first time. I'm so overwhelmed. So once you've got the confidence, you can start relaxing and you can get creative and do things in a better way than what you would normally.
What year is it that you actually, because it's 3 years in training, so what year is it that you actually hit the streets?
1979.
Okay.
Yes, I am really old.
Well, it's not even that. It's you look at 1979 as compared to 2025, and policing is a completely separate thing. I mean, they're
Completely different
done
animal.
completely differently. When you go to Star, what year is that?
That is 1989.
Okay. I'm glad you brought up 89 because I do want to talk to you about that. You were awarded the Bravery Medal in 1989 for disarming an armed offender. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And then, but here's the crazy thing I heard about it. I heard that you put your thumb in between the hammer so that it couldn't fall on the gun, and that's how you disarmed him.
Correct. Correct. We pulled a car over, and this is a long story short, and I love telling the long version, but I'll make it short tonight.
No,
Um,
tell the long version. Let's hear it.
yeah, okay. Okay. So we pulled a car over, and my partner and I were known on our team as being super operationally safe. If something could be done safely, they would look for Sam and I to do it. Sam was a big driver of that. He ate, slept, drank, everything, policing, and he and I discussed operational safety all the time. So we did everything as operationally safe as you possibly could. So we approached the car. We've gone out wide. We've come in. We've had a look inside. And before we even speak to the driver, who's a male, and the passenger, who's a female, we scan the car and we both spot the center console, which has got a spoon and a syringe and a foil and a lighter. And we're standing by the car, we're looking in, we haven't engaged with them, but we just lift our eyes and look at each other and just give each other a knowing nod. Yes, that's what we're dealing with. So we get the people out of the car, and there's so much background I need to tell you. But anyway, we get the people out of the car, and
Well,
as we get them out of
so give me the background because I think people need to understand too. Everything that you're seeing in the car, I'm assuming is you're dealing with a heroin addict.
yeah, absolutely, two heroin addicts, and they were two thieves.
Okay.
And but I will feed the background into the story
Okay.
where it fits, and I'm just getting in my head for this telling that I'm doing in this scenario. So we get them out of the car, and I say to the driver, "We are now." In fact, my apologies. My partner went to the driver's side. I went to the passenger side, and we've pulled them out of the car. And I said, "We are now going to search the car." And the female has gone, "No, you're not," and she's jumped back into the car, right, and just sat with her feet hanging out the car. And I've gone, either you get out of the car now, or I'm going to have to arrest you before I search the car. I just go, no, I'm not getting out at all. The male has then said, leant into the car and just gone, get out of the car, letting them search it. And so he sounds like he's being compliant. And my partner's letting him go because he sounds like he's helping us. And he is trying to convince her. He doesn't convince her. I drag this woman out, and I literally have to drag her out because she is now hindering police. So we have the authority to arrest her because she's hindering us in the execution of our duty. So I drag her out. I start putting her handcuffs on her. I get a handcuff on one arm, and as I do that, my partner calls out, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun." And I've gone, what the hell? I didn't get time to put the other handcuff on her, which I probably should have, but it would have taken a little bit of extra time and I wouldn't have been able to get into the car as quickly. So I focused on this gun. And my partner has grabbed the barrel. Oh, actually, bit of background. My partner's called out, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. What I found out later is that the guy had reached into the handbag that she was sitting on and pulled out a pistol, turned it towards my partner, and pulled the trigger several times, but the gun has failed to fire. My partner has grabbed the barrel, pushed it down into the footwell, called out to me, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. He's got on the radio. I've jumped into the car, I've got the offender in a headlock, and I've grabbed his wrist to try and control the gun while my partner tries to pull it off of him. My partner is calling on the radio for backup patrols. When you're approaching, he's got a gun. There could be other offenders in the area. Really, really thoughtful processes that he's going through in his mind, and he's communicating to other people in the midst of fighting with this guy with the gun. So he was calm, he was relaxed, he was trying to work out how to make it safe for other people as well as make it safer for us. The offender has realised that the weapon isn't firing. And that it's broken. Now, a little bit of history to that. The gun had just been stolen that night. The gun had been stolen from the police armourer's private home safe. The gun belonged to a guy in Star Group that I later worked with, right? And it was private weapon. The armourer was, does private repairs on weapons. So it just had this police and Star Group connection all the way through it. So there's a little bit of an irony there. But the weapon is broken. That's why the police armourer's got it. This guy has tried to fire it. It hasn't fired. He's now calling out to his girlfriend, "Cop the gun, cop the gun." For those people who understand guns, it wouldn't fire on double action. And that is that when you pull the trigger, the hammer goes back and then it comes forward. It had to be fired on single action, which meant you have to pull the hammer back and then pull the trigger and it'll fall forward. And he's called out to his girlfriend, "Cock the gun, cock the gun." Now, apparently she's been playing the drums on my back. She's just been absolutely bashing me. This is something my partner told me afterwards. I've gone, I didn't feel a thing. I didn't know she was even there. But he's calling out, "Cock the gun, cock the gun." She has climbed over the top of this wrestling trio, and she has just cocked the gun. And having had no training in this environment whatsoever for this sort of scenario, as she has cocked the gun, I have just gone, oh, if I put my thumb in between the hammer and the gun, hold the hammer back, there's no way in the world it's going to fire. So we struggled on for about another 2 minutes with my thumb just holding the hammer back. Now, we had just been changing over. This is a bit of the history that I was saying I need to give you the background. We had just changed over from having semi-automatic pistols in our pocket and like hidden in our pocket, hard to access. A lot of cops didn't even carry them in their pocket. I carried mine in a shoulder holster. Quite a few of them just left them in the glove box. So this is the old days. And we had just changed over to exposed firearms that we carried on our hip, and it was a Smith & Wesson 38 Special, and I had the weapon on my hip, and it had a very different holster to anything that it had before. When my partner has been calling out on the radio, we need backup, we need, blah, blah, he's got a gun, a traffic cop has rocked up to the side of the car, and it's a female. And she looks into the car, and here we are. We're wrestling with this guy. He's got a gun. His girlfriend's cocked it. She's running around with one handcuff on. My partner's calling, be careful. There's other people in the area. This female cop rocks up to the car, and she goes, "What's going on?" And I'm a little bit stunned. I'm wrestling here. I'm a little bit stunned. I just look at her. He's got a gun. She goes, "Oh, right. What do you want me to do?" I said, "What the? You stupid." And I was wrestling with this guy and abusing this female police officer that's come to help us. Now, she had no idea what was going on. She was on a different radio channel. She just saw us at the side of the road and thought, "Oh, I'll go and see what they're doing and try and help them out." She worked on a different channel because she was a traffic cop and we were general patrols. So she didn't know what was happening. A failure of the system, no two ways about it. But she's rocked up and she wants to help. And I am abusing the living daylights out of her, um, with a side of sarcasm in there as well. And she said, "So what do you want me to do?" I said, "Get your gun out. It's trying to shoot us. Get your gun out." She said, "I don't have one. I'm not carrying a gun." And I just lost it. "You stupid. How did you not have a gun?" And I said, "Get my gun out." Now, we just changed over guns. She's used to the old holsters. She's not used to the new holsters. She doesn't know how to get the gun out of my holster. So I've now got this guy in a headlock holding onto his pistol, got my thumb holding back the hammer, and she's got a hand on my gun, and she is just rolling me around all over the place trying to get the gun out. And the guy eventually just goes, "I give up, I give up." And he let go of the gun. And so it was just this absolute comedy. And I spoke to her afterwards and said, "How the hell can you not have a gun?" And remember, this is going back to the 70s, 80s. She hadn't had weapons training for 7 years at that time. And she said, "So my protest is, if you are not going to train me, I am not going to carry a gun." Now, here's the irony. I said, "So who knows that you're not carrying a gun?" She said, "Oh, no, it's my silent protest." And I've gone, "Ugh." So and this is where I take things to the next level. I've gone, "Right, we are going to get you weapons training this week. You are not going out on patrol again if you are not carrying a weapon." So we went away and did that, and she got upgraded to the new weapons, and the fairy tale finished on a high note. But that was a very interesting situation to be in. My partner, very, very operationally safe. Sam, absolute legend. He lifted my performance, and I boosted his at different times as well. But if we hadn't approached it in that way, again, it could have been a very different scenario.
What do you think escalated it? Because you said they're thieves. They have a background of being thieves. That raises it to a whole new level by pulling a gun on cops, because you're looking at capital murder charges if that happens, and he did try and fire it and kill your partner. What do you think it was about that situation that heightened it so much?
In my opinion, it was panic. I don't know what else to do. I know that I've got drugs on the center console. In the boot of the car was a whole heap of stolen property. He knew that he'd been into a police officer's house and stolen weapons from a police officer's house. He was going to get caught for this. There was going to be a huge penalty. Nowhere near what murder is, but it's like, oh my gosh, there's things that happen. Excuse me. There's things that happen in our human brain when everything is comfortable. Our emotions and our rational thinking sit on an even plane. When things are going the way you want, you can plan, you can create, you can be humorous, you can debate, you can do all sorts of things when things are comfortable. But as soon as things start going out of control, our emotions start going high and our rational thinking drops. And when that happens, we're in fight and flight mode, and we are in absolute panic mode. It's not when we do the smart stuff, it's when we do the dumb stuff. And this is where he was at that time. Oh my God, what do I do? I know there's a gun there. I can shoot my way out of this and we'll go away and nobody will know who we are. I don't know exactly what the thought process was in his mind, but that's likely what it was. And so I think it was just a panic thing. He didn't think it through. It was just, what can I do to get away from this? And he was high on drugs. So he's not making rational thought process anyway.
Because I have a feeling if that girl's not there, I don't think it gets as out of control as it did.
Potentially.
Yeah. Just because, I think there are mitigating factors in some situations where it's not going to get out of control, and then there's a person there that makes it get out of control, whether that be your partner, whether that be someone that's just a person walking by. But I've seen it happen numerous times.
Yeah, and there's certainly the male ego of I'm here with my female partner,
Right.
I've got to look after her.
A
Yeah,
hundred
there,
percent.
there's no doubt about it. It certainly could have impacted her.
So at this time, it's 89. You are already, I'm guessing, on the star team, correct?
No,
You
no,
so
I
you
was on
hadn't gone
general
yet. Okay.
patrols. That was general patrols, yeah, and that actually happened in 1987. And
Okay.
it wasn't until 1989 that I got the award for it.
Wow.
The
That
awards process is a slow process.
yes, it is. That's a really slow process. So 87 to 89, you see it heightened up, and you see kind of, I would think at that time policing is changing there going into the 90s, because end of the 80s you're going into, did you guys have a problem with crack cocaine and everything, because you're coming into that era?
Nowhere near as big as the US, and crack cocaine didn't probably hit Australia until probably mid to late 90s. And
Okay.
even then, it was nowhere near what you had in the US. But we
So
certainly
what,
had it here.
yeah, what was the problems that you were having there? What did you see was kind of the crime trends in Australia at that time?
The South Australia was a very fortunate place for lots of different historical reasons. We didn't have the same crime that the eastern states have. Uh, Australia was founded on convicts, and so the eastern seaboard, the original police officers were convicts, and I think that has influenced them. South Australia was settled by free settlers, so everybody came over and they were, somewhat educated, or they had some money behind them, or they came here by choice, and that influenced the type of policing we had here because of the background of the people that they were dealing with at the very beginning. They were a different clientele. Um, and so South Australia has not seen the same problems that they have on the eastern states. The eastern states have a lot of underworld, mafia, that sort of thing, mobs, um, even oh yeah, mafia and all that sort of stuff. We had a drug issue here, but most of it was around marijuana. We didn't have a massive uh, problem with the cooking of cocaine. It was certainly happening, but we didn't have a massive problem with it. We had an area just outside of Adelaide called Virginia, where it was a market garden. They had glass houses, and they were growing tomatoes, and the tomatoes morphed into marijuana, and they were in the glass houses, so they weren't visible. Um, and so we called what people did at that time. They were living in a little shanty, doing their market gardening, and then all of a sudden there's this three-story mansion that grew next door, and eventually we've gone, that is the marijuana mansion because that's what's paid for it. There's no other way they could have got it. So that was probably our biggest problems at the time. We didn't have the massive problems that other people did have.
Um, when you look back on your career, is there a call, or something that you did that made you feel you made the right decision? Like, I can remember mine was the first homicide that I worked. Just as a patrol element, it just fascinated me. Was there something that you did that you thought, yeah, I made the right decision? I know that later on it became Another Tuesday, but was there ever a point where you were like, yeah, this is what I was supposed to do?
That was the point that I joined Star Group. I enjoyed being a police officer before Star Group,
Hmm.
and you know, uh, I know that because I was just passionate about coming to work. Had a great team around me. I was even when I was a junior officer but senior on the team, there was a lack of sergeants at that higher level. And me as a junior officer, they've come to me and gone, Derrick, we need you to step up to relieving sergeant. And I've gone, hang on a second, I'm nowhere near that. And they've gone, yeah, but we've seen you operate. So I was a good operator. I enjoyed what I was doing, but I was never really passionate about it. And I was always looking for something else. And the moment I realized I was where I needed to be and where I wanted to be was when I joined Star Group, and I've gone, this is it. This is it and a bit, and I could have stayed there for the rest of my life. It was just sensational.
Which is crazy because, I mean, you're 10 years into your career before you go over to Star Team. So that Groundhog Day thing for 10 years had to drive you crazy.
It wasn't Groundhog Day for 10 years. It was just towards the end. It was, they'd moved me into the office, and I was doing office work and, out on patrol every now and then, which is a normal transition that, we go through every now and then. You get moved into the office for a period of time, but it did get that way in the end, and I was still enjoying it, and more than anything, I enjoyed the team that I was working with. People talk about having days off and having sickies and taking mental health days, as we call them these days. I didn't have those. I loved being in that environment, but I knew I wanted more. I knew I wanted something else that I wasn't getting here. And there were times where it became just another Tuesday. We're doing the same thing. But when I stepped into Star Group, it was just, and even in Star Group, it was just another Tuesday. We're going through this situation. We've done this so many times before, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it, because no matter whether it was the same gigs again and again, there's always something different that you need to be aware of. Yeah, and that was the moment for me when I stepped into Star Group. I've gone, this is where I've always needed to be.
I got to ask you a question that I've always heard about Australia, and you tell me if it's true. I heard that everything wants to kill you in Australia. Is that a true statement?
As an Australian, I go, what are you talking about? From an outsider's perspective, I go, oh, I get it. Yeah, I see what you mean. And again, it's like another Tuesday. We are so used to it that it's very, very comfortable, because, yes, there's a lot of things that can do damage to you here, but there's spiders or there's snakes or that's basically it, spiders and snakes. But that's about it, and you don't see them all the time. And even when we're walking in the bush, and we've got sharks as well. But even when you're walking in the bush and there are potentially snakes there, if you don't go near them, they won't come near you. They are more scared of you than what you are of them, and they want to go away. The only time they'll attack is if you happen to disturb them while they're near their babies. Or the biggest reason that people get bitten by a snake is they try to kill the snake. And in trying to kill the snake, chase it and hit it with an axe or hit it with a spade or something else, snake gets scared, turns around, attacks, and people get bitten by snakes. And yes, we've got dangerous spiders here as well. Very few people actually get bitten by a spider and die. Yes, there's a few people that get bitten by a spider and spend a day or two in hospital just being monitored. And yes, it's painful when a spider bites you. Very few people die. So it's a bit of a misnomer. We've got more poisonous snakes than anybody else. Very few people die of snake bites. So yes, there is, but yeah, it's not as bad as what people would make it out to be. It's like saying when you go to America, you've got to be careful because there's mass killings on every corner. Is that something you deal with in America on a daily basis for yourself?
Right. Yeah. I completely get it. That's always the thing that I've heard, was that it's super dangerous there. Just with, like you said, spiders, snakes, sharks, but it was, presented as anywhere you would go that those things are going to be waiting on the corner, which is exactly what you said about, America with there's a mass killing around every corner, or, Um, when you're doing patrol and then you go over to the star group, I always got to ask because when I was in the military, we trained with the Australian Army, and those guys could drink. They could drink. They like to have a good time. They like to play rugby. Is it that same kind of environment in the police as it is in the military over there?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. I'm very fortunate. I didn't actually start drinking until I was 26. And that was just as I got married. So I say that my wife drove me to drink, and she's very comfortable with that I say that. She doesn't agree with it. We're divorced now as well, but we still got on extremely well. But I didn't start drinking until I was 26, so I didn't get into that culture at a young age. And then I was only slowly getting into it as I start drinking after 26. But in my early career, probably prior to the 2000s, the drinking culture was rife. Um, and police found themselves in situations where, police would look after police, and very much changed these days. Everything is more accountable, and we are more aware of what our responsibilities to the public are. But back in the day, police looked after police, and if you got into trouble when you were drinking, then the police would look after you. If you came to work and you'd had too much to drink, you were allowed to go and sit over there and all those sorts of things. It was certainly one of those things that was there. It was the way of probably solving mental health problems. This job has been too big. Okay, let's go and get smashed. All those sorts of things. It's very different these days. There's still always going to be some of that somewhere, but it was rife back in the day.
When you start going, well, we got to talk first because if you're talking, you said the 2000s before you actually got into drinking. Uh, we got to talk about those first years on the department. If you're saying it's rife and you're not fitting in, how does that work?
Um, yeah, it's I didn't drink, but I would still go to the pub or the hotel,
Okay.
the bar, and I'd drink orange juice or water or lemon squash or whatever else. I was still associating with the people. I wasn't getting drunk in the same way, but I was also an idiot. I could do all the stuff that the drunk people do, but I wouldn't know exactly what I'm doing. I would do it by choice because I was an idiot. Um, but I was also able to do all the risk assessment at the same time. And yeah, let's do this. No, now we need to stop. So I was probably the sensible one. In fact, I remember we went away on a houseboat trip. So the whole team hired a houseboat on the river, sailing up and down. It was a great time. And we're all sitting across the back. Somebody's driving. We're all sitting across the back, legs in the water, and the boys are cracking beers. And every time you crack a beer, it goes. But I would crack an orange juice, and when the orange juice you crack it, it just goes crack. But I would go, and everybody cracked up laughing. So I did as much as I could to try and fit in, and just well accepted by the guys that I was with. I didn't get in with the guys that were really, really heavy drinkers.
Right.
It wasn't the group that I chose to be with. But when we had a hard time at work, or when we had the night shift barbecue, the barbecue after night shift on the last night at 7:30 a.m. I'd be there. I'd be cooking the sausages and the steaks and all the rest of it. So it was being in that environment and just not judging negatively the people that were drinking.
I got to ask your opinion on another thing that I learned from the Australians was Vegemite. They ate it on they ate it on everything.
And your issue? What's the problem?
It
I'm
tastes
not sure what
horrible.
the question is here.
It tastes horrible. I got to understand one, if you like it, and if you do like it, why do you like it?
I I I can eat Vegemite by the spoonful. I don't have to spread it on toast. And when I am putting it on a sandwich or something, I will, just have a spoonful of it as I'm eating it. It is a very acquired taste. Um, but it's kind of like you guys have got a fascination with deep frying everything. Everything's got to be deep fried for you guys, right? I've got to ask, why? Why does everything have to have peanut butter on it? I've been to America 4 times now, and one time I went with my daughter, and we've gone, right, we've got to try this peanut butter. Everything's peanut butter, and we couldn't eat everything that was on offer with peanut butter in it. So it's the same sort of thing. But yeah, Vegemite is very much an acquired taste. Um, and there are Australians that absolutely detest Vegemite. But
I have never met one. In all the ones that I've met, I've never met one that didn't like Vegemite. And, they sell it in America now. You can buy it at the
oh yeah,
grocery store now, but I just never understood the fascination with it. Because from what I understand, it's just the scraping of the beer barrels. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's the yeast extract from beer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
no, go ahead.
I I actually think that one of the things that drives it even more is the fascination that people that go, "How could you eat that crap?" I go, "We're proud of what we eat. We love doing the stuff that you don't like." There is that little bit of bravado that goes in behind there, and when people come and visit Australia and they see me eating a spoonful of it, it's like,
Well,
and I
I
just
would
love it.
agree with the fried. You're absolutely right. If you go to a state fair in America, they have whole sections that's nothing but deep fried, and it's
Yeah.
everything deep fried candy bars, everything. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
I completely understand what you're saying about that. Let's talk about what we really came here to talk about today. On May 3rd, 1994, you're shot 14 times during a high risk warrant execution. So can we set up this scenario of what happened, how it kind of came to be that you guys are going to execute this warrant, and what was kind of the end idea of this warrant? What was the I guess the main objective behind this warrant?
So the main objective behind the warrant is that the person named in the warrant had not appeared in court as he was required. We were going to execute the warrant, arrest him, bring him, put him to jail so that he would appear in court to answer the charges that were against him. Um, the background to that simple scenario is that this is the third time that I personally had dealt with this person in a siege confrontational type environment. Um, he was supposed to appear in court for fraud charges, 197 counts of fraud.
Oh my god!
Right, so it's not just one or two or 10,
Right.
there's 197 counts, and he was contesting every one of them. Now, when we say 197 that he was contesting in court, I know for a fact that there were a huge number that they hadn't actually been able to get to court yet. So they were sitting in abeyance waiting for further investigation or enough evidence. Um, so when they were first investigated, which was probably about 3 years prior to 1994 when we executed the warrant, it was local cops back then in the country. We're talking the early 90s, and everything's still fairly relaxed in policing. And the country cops would ring the offender up, as they did in this case, and say, "Hey, listen, we're investigating the fact that you may have stolen cars or ripped cars off or defrauded people, whatever it might have been. You need to come into the police station so that we can interview you." And the story that we've got is he's gone, "No, I'm not coming into the police station." And the police said, "Okay, well, we'll come out to your house." And his answer was, "Any cop who comes near my house is going to get shot." Now, the local detectives have gone, "We take this threat seriously. We're going to call in Star Group." So, in that first occasion, I was part of the team that did the leopard crawl, the belly crawl through the paddocks of his property. It was a ranch or a property, as we call it, a farm, and we were doing the leopard crawl under the fences, right up to the house. And then, as the detectives and a couple of other Star Group officers walked up the driveway to his house, we were standing at the windows and at the doors listening to see whether he was preparing weapons and getting ready to shoot someone, and looking in where we could, but nothing happened. And when he's opened the door and he saw the Star Grouper there, he's gone, "Oh, what are you worried about? Oh, didn't you know I was only joking? I didn't really mean that." But he'd made the threat, so we had to take it seriously.
Of course.
We then took his weapons off of him, and we took his firearms license off of him. And he, just trying to think of what I can say and what I can't say, in my own judgments. This guy's not an idiot. He's stupid, but he's not an idiot, right? He's crazy.
There's a
but he's
huge
not an
difference,
idiot.
so I think you should explain, because there is a huge difference in criminals in those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this guy was intelligent. He was able to think through problems. He was able to analyze things. He was able to do his own problem solving. He actually had a portfolio, and this is back in the early 90s, a portfolio of all of the Star Group officers that he possibly could, because he would sit in front of the TV with a film camera and take, a camera with film in it. It's before digital age. And he would take photographs of every police officer he saw on the TV, and then he would have those printed off, and he had them in a file. So he was organized, he was intelligent, but he just made stupid decisions, right? And he did stupid things. He would try and rip off bikies because he thought he could beat the bikies at their own game. So he was an idiot, but an intelligent idiot. And there is a very clear distinction between the two, but when you put them together, it is extremely dangerous, because you've got an intelligent person doing stupid stuff very well. So we were aware of this, and this intelligent idiot has gone to the courts and said, "Oh, the police have taken my firearms license off of me and declared me a dangerous person. I'm not allowed to have my firearms back. And if the police keep them, I've got some very valuable weapons, and the police will not look after them the right way. When I get them back, they'll have rust. They won't be looked after well. Now, you can't give the weapons back to me because I don't have a firearms license, but you can give them back to my wife who has a firearms license." And the court has gone, "Oh, that sounds like an all right idea." So they gave them back to the wife, and obviously he had access to them at that time as well. So we appealed that decision. The appeal was upheld. We went out to get the firearms back, but we knew it wasn't going to be easy. And so we approached his house under a subterfuge reason. And we came out of the back of a police vehicle as Star Group, and we just confronted him and held him, detained him while we searched the house and got the weapons back. An intelligent idiot, the intelligent part of him has secreted half of the weapons somewhere that we still haven't found to this day. So we got half the weapons back, half of them are still out there. My apologies, there's one being recovered in the 35 years since we've taken them. It was oiled up with all sorts of gum grease, rolled up in proper wrapping for a firearm, and then rolled up into a carpet and put at the back of a shed and just covered with lots of other things. And when police were searching for something else, they've come across the weapon. So we've got one out of about probably a dozen weapons. So there's still around about 11 weapons that are still out there that we believe he knows where they are, but we're not able to find them. And if he doesn't disclose it, we'll probably struggle to find it. Well, we are struggling to find them. So we get half the weapons back on. Yeah.
I just want to make sure. So are you saying that there was 24 weapons total when this began?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Somewhere around there. I don't know the exact numbers.
And what kind of weapons did it range in?
Weapons.
What kind of weapons are we talking about?
Oh, we're talking high power rifles.
Okay.
308s, 223s, all that sort of high powered, high end. He used to be a firearms dealer as one of his jobs. So, and legal firearms dealer. So he had access to cheaper weapons and really nice weapons. And some of the weapons were very nice weapons. So, that side of it was true. But there are still half of those weapons that are still sitting out there somewhere that presumably he still knows where they are. So that was the second time that we interacted with him. And then the third time is where we were executing the warrant. We got a call from the courts. Yeah, I've listened to your other podcasts, so I know you will enjoy this part of the story because it's that extra background. He had been in court the day before the warrant was issued, and he had appeared in court, and he knew that the judge was going to sentence him to jail. It had got to that time in his trial where he knew that he was going to get sentenced, and so he has gone. I'm going to have a break. I need to have a break from this and do some thinking. He's left the court, gone into the hallway, and feigned a fainting attack. Now, I say he's feigned it because the ambulance officers that came to this fainted person said they were doing everything they could to stimulate him. They could see that he was fully awake and fully aware, but he was intelligent enough and stupid enough that he didn't respond to any of the pain stimulus that other people do. But the ambulance officer said he knew exactly what was going on, but he was able to feign it. So they've gone, okay, well, we're going to have to take him to the hospital and let the doctors make the assessment. And so they've taken him out of the court. As soon as he has got to the hospital, the judge has said, send 2 sheriff's officers down to the hospital and arrest that man and bring him back before me today. As soon as he's got to the hospital, bang, he's gone. Released himself from hospital and gone home. And so that information's come back to the court, and the court has gone, issue a warrant. We want that man arrested today. We knew he was a high risk, so they asked Star Group to go and arrest him. 4 members of Star Group went to arrest him. My apologies, 5 members of Star Group and 1 other police officer with a video camera went to arrest him. It's the first time in South Australia and potentially Australia that anybody had ever filmed an arrest of an offender. And this was because every time we interacted with him, he would make a list of complaints. He was very vindictive and malicious, and he would make stuff up. I can't remember the word that I actually want to use there, but he would make stuff up because he knew if he complained, then we had to type out a report, and it was typing. It was not a computer. It was triple carbon, all that sort of stuff. Nightmare back in the day. But we would have to type out these reports and answer every one of his complaints. And he knew that police officers would avoid interacting with him, avoid upsetting him, so that he didn't complain and they'd have to sit down and write reports. So we've gone, okay, let's be really smart about this. Let's get rid of half of his complaints by just videoing it and showing that we did the right thing the whole way. It actually turned out to be essential evidence in court, absolutely essential. So 4 of us went to the front of the house. We had a sniper sitting in the bush about 100 meters from the house. Now, he was a sniper, but we didn't need him to operate as a sniper with a weapon. He was just a marksman observer. And, you know, from your background in policing and military, you would know that the most important job for a sniper or marksman observer is just to get into position without being seen, without being heard, make observations forward so that he can inform the operations commander, so that the operations commander can make informed decisions about the actions we need to take. So that's what we wanted him for. We just wanted him to be watching the house, tell us where the offender was, tell us when it was safe for us to approach the house with the least risk for us. So he was up in the bush. We went to the front of the house. And this video is available on YouTube. For anybody who wants to look at it, you can go to my YouTube channel, and it's derrickmcmanus.com, and have a look at this video, or just Google Derrick McManus shot 14 times, and that video will come up, and it shows us driving up to the front of the house. You see us get out of the cars. You see us go to the front door of the house. The sergeant knocks on the front door, and there is no answer. But our sniper is telling us he's inside, so we know he's inside. We know he should be answering the door. We presume that he can hear what we're doing because the sergeant calls out, you know, Mr. Grosso, it's the police. We want to talk to you. And there's no answer. So he knocks again and he calls again. But at this stage, I'm front of the house here, side of the house here. I'm on this corner here, and we're supposed to go in through the front door of the house, which was going to take a door popper to open up the screen door, battering ram to enter the main wooden solid door, and then file in there. Down the side of the house, 5 steps from where I am, just 5 steps, there's a sliding door. And I've gone, do you know something that's going to be a safer, more efficient, more effective entry? And one of our contingency plans for Starries is this is our primary entry. We have a second entry. If this one is blocked, we have a secondary entry that we can use as an option. But if there is an easier option and you see it, let the sergeant know and he will make a decision whether we use it or not. I took 5 steps down the side to have a look at the sliding door, to see glass sliding door, to see whether we could use that as an entry or not. And as I got to within about 2 feet of the sliding door, he saw me from where he was standing inside the house, and he started shooting, and I was the target. He fired 18 times with a 7.62 SKK Chinese military weapon. Bullets fired were the same that the Chinese use when they go to war. He fired 18 times and hit me 14 times. Now, the cliche statement is I was shot 14 times. The truth is I got hit 14 times with either bullets or shrapnel. But the easy statement is I was shot 14 times.
Do you remember your last cognizant thought before that happened?
Oh, I do. This is another one of those slightly embarrassing moments. As I approached that sliding door, I remember looking at the door and going, okay, I'm just going to reach out, see if the door's open, and then I can go and tell the sergeant, we can make an entry in here or smash the door, and it's going to be a really quick, easy entry. As I was reaching out to it, I just started falling to the ground. And I remember cursing myself. And, how stupid can I be? Highly trained Star Group operative. All I wanted to do was check the door, and now I'm stupidly falling to the ground. And this is absolutely abusing myself, running through my mind as I'm slowly falling to the ground. And I look at this sliding door again, and I haven't felt any impact. I haven't felt any pain. But all of a sudden, I see these small round holes that hadn't been there a moment before. And then, separate to seeing those, I then hear the sound of gunfire somewhere in the distance. And as I am falling to the ground, I start rationalizing to myself, I'm falling to the ground. Absolutely inexplicable. You're an absolute idiot. But there's small round holes in these glass door. There's sound of gunfire. Oh, hang on a second. You must be getting shot. And the thought that ran through my head at that point was, Derrick, don't be too hard on yourself, because if you're getting shot, it's quite acceptable to fall over. And that's literally what I thought before I hit the ground. But then I've hit the ground and I'm lying on my back. My feet are pointing directly at where the bullets are coming from, and my head are facing away. I still haven't felt the impact. I haven't felt any pain, but I've just rationalized this. And then I find 2 bullets. I remember 2 bullets hitting me. No pain, but I felt the impact. I'm lying on my back and a bullet hit my left thigh. And it is like a sledgehammer just absolutely driving into my thigh. And this shockwave went slowly up through my body, all the way to the top of my head. And then that shockwave came slowly back down through my body. Now remember, 18 bullets are fired in less than 5 seconds. These 2 bullets seem to take 30 seconds. Reality is they were fired in that space of time, and they hit me that quickly, but it seemed to take 30 seconds. The second bullet hit, and again, it's that sledgehammer, again, it's that shockwave slowly up, shockwave slowly back down, and I'm starting to abuse myself again. How can I realistically lie here and just accept being shot? I'm higher trained than that. You're an idiot. Why aren't you doing this? So I've already got my pistol in my hand, and so I've lined up to fire back. But as I line up to fire back, I realize that I'm firing along the length of my body, and at the other end of my body are my feet, and my feet are pointing up. And I know that I need to get up just that little bit so I can shoot over the top of my feet, but I've got a flak vest on. I've got weaponry, I've got equipment. My upper body is much heavier than my lower body, and as you would appreciate, as I lift up my upper body, my feet just come up to counterbalance. And the thought that ran through my head was I better not shoot myself in the foot because the guys at work will give me shit for the rest of my life. You can just imagine you get shot 14 times and then you shoot yourself as well. And that is the rational thought that is running through my mind right at that time.
I think
And
it
this
should be
again goes
pointed
back.
out. I think it should be pointed out how often that happens in police work, first responders, military, where worse than being shot is being made fun of for the rest of your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't sound rational at all, but it happens constantly.
Absolutely. But I think part of this comes back to those three words that I said earlier. With confidence comes comfort, and you become relaxed. When you become relaxed, you can get creative. And in that moment, I was confident about myself. My emotions certainly went up initially, and my rational thinking went back down. I was completely overwhelmed. I didn't feel the pain. I didn't feel the impacts. And then I felt those two impacts. And then it suddenly hit me that I need to do what I need to do. And my mind went straight back into, I know how to handle this. I've been trained. I've thought this process through for myself. I know what I need to do. And I became comfortable, so comfortable that I could think outside the square. Now, most people would go, well, I'm never going to be that highly trained. I'm never going to be able to do that in that moment of panic. But they can for the challenges that they know they're going to face. If you think about when they drive a car, when you drive a car, when anybody drives a car, the first time you got into a car, what was it like? Getting in behind the steering wheel, oh my God, I'm going to kill someone with this beast. I'm really, really nervous. And the person tells you, okay, we're going to turn right and you're going to need to use the indicator to indicate to everybody else to go right. And it's like, you mean take my hand off the steering wheel? When you drive now, what's it like? Okay, you're driving along the road, something happens in front of you, you're dodging, weaving without even thinking about it. But before that, you're talking to the person next to you, you're singing to the tunes, you're talking to the kids in the back seat. But when that one thing happens in front of you, bang, you are you are into instant action to be able to handle the challenges that you are prepared for. We in the police, we in the military get prepared for different challenges. In Star Group, Marines, Delta Force, whatever it might be, we get trained to that next level up. But as a challenge we choose to take on, and as a challenge we choose to prepare ourselves. In much of the speaking that I do and the workshops that I run these days, I talk to corporates and I like to find out what are your challenges and how can we better prepare you to handle those challenges. And one of the analogies I love to use is that my accountant is my favorite person in the whole world. She's a lovely lady. She could never be a starry. She would not make that decision, pull the trigger, take someone's life if I need to protect that other. She just could not do it. She couldn't jump out of helicopters. But the other side of the coin is also true. I couldn't sit in an office and crunch numbers. I would have nightmares about having to do that. She stays awake at night going, oh my God, I've got this wonderful problem solving of numbers tomorrow. I love her. But everybody's got to find what they are passionate about and then prepare for those challenges.
As this is going on, because we kind of cut into it, as you kind of counterbalance yourself in order to fire back into the structure, are you able to get off effective shots? Not just shots, effective shots.
As I decide that I'm going to fire back, I remember consciously thinking, I can't see what I'm shooting at. Dark in the house, sun's behind me, the glass is like a mirror, but I can hear the sound of gunfire. So I just want to put a few shots downrange to give him something to worry about. And I consciously thought to myself, I just want to shoot 6 or 7 times just to give him something to worry about. I had 15 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber, and I wanted to fire 6 or 7. The video analysis afterwards shows that I fired 13 shots. So I just got a little bit excited. But I fired 13 shots. One of them hit, and I couldn't see what I was shooting at, so it was just in that direction. One of them hit a brick in the wall next to where he was standing. and one skipped across his back, just enough to leave a line across his back, to not do any damage. So that's the 2 effective rounds out of 13. The first round, and this is a sad fact and a sad indictment on the weaponry that we use, they say that the first round that I fired got caught in the very fine sheer curtains, right? Because it's hit it and the curtain has absorbed the power, and just held it in the curtain. So one of my bullets was in that curtain. But once that force had been taken, the next ones hit it and it was a little bit tighter, so passed through. But I got off 13 shots back at him. When I fired back, it had exactly the effect I wanted. He stopped shooting, and he had to do something to protect himself. I then rolled to my right to get out of the line of fire. So, yeah, I was able to get those shots off.
You were talking about the weaponry. What were you firing back?
I had a 6-hour 9mm pistol.
Um, the whole thing about this is that you laid wounded for like 3 hours.
Correct.
With you having a team there, what was the problem of getting you out of that? You know, because you would think immediately they cover down on you, pull you out. What was the problem with getting cover to you to get you out of that funnel you were in?
So, again, you can go back and watch the video on the YouTube channel, and you'll see that we're all lined up across the front of the house. The video camera, I sometimes berate the video camera guy in a very friendly, teasing, banter manner, but I berate him because he's standing at the corner of a shed and he's shooting across this way, and I'm on the corner of his shot, and he's focused on the sergeant who's knocking on the front door because that's where he thinks the action's going to be. But in the video, you can see that the shooting starts and the sergeant goes, "Oh, this isn't very good." Steps behind there's no panic. He steps behind the brick pillar. You can see that he looks across at the other guys. There are no words exchanged. And they just go, without exchanging a word, "This is not a safe place to be." And they start moving away. At the time they start moving away from the house to find a safe place further from the house, that's when I call out, "I'm hit, I'm hit." They hear me calling out, "I'm hit, I'm hit." But they're now committed to movement. They're in no man's land. It's not a safe place. So they just keep committing to that movement of getting out of his way, finding stability, getting to a place where they can then come back and get to me. Now, I say I tease the video guy because he's standing here, he's filming across this way. If he just turned this way a little bit, he would have looked right down the side of the house and he would have caught the shooting on camera. As it turns out, he missed it completely. You could hear me, but I would have loved to have seen that actual video. So I quite often berate him for having missed the shot that he should have got. But what happens when the guys move away is that the sergeant moves to a certain area, the cameraman goes with one of the Star Group officers, and they go behind a fibro shed. Now, they know that it's not protection, but it is concealment. Okay? So they're standing behind the fibro shed and they feel like they're in a safe spot because he can't see where they are. Unfortunately for them, when I've shot at him, he's then run down the hallway and into another room and looked out at the front of the house so that he could see where the rest of the police are. And he saw the guys go in behind the fibro shed. And so he's just let shots off through the fibro shed. And if you've ever seen those animated cartoons where people stand behind something, somebody shoots into it, and it makes the perfect figure of that person around them, they said that's exactly what it felt like. Bullets went this side, bullets went between them, bullets went by their legs. How they got missed, they don't know. And so they knew that he now had a position that he could see where they are. He then went up into the roof of the house because he knew that he was going to be somewhat protected up in the roof of the house. And this old farmhouse, solid stone and brick, but it had ventilation bricks in the roof area. So in the old days, they had the ventilation bricks, but you could see out of the ventilation bricks. Our sniper, our marksman observer, he had moved from where he was around to a house that was now in the field of fire, and he knocked on the front door and he was talking to people and saying, you need to move to the back or just evacuate. So he was doing the right thing there. But as the offender was looking out through this ventilation brick, he saw the guy out there, the starry, and he has just started shooting through the ventilation brick, and putting rounds in his area. Now, those rounds were dropping around this guy's feet. He's very, very lucky that he didn't get hit. But everybody in stories has a slightly twisted sense of humor and a light-hearted way of telling a story. Um, a little bit of an aside, off on a tangent. This guy was a professional sprinter. He'd competed in some of the professional races. He was very, very quick. But he said when those rounds started dropping at his feet, he broke the 100-meter record. He broke the 200-meter record, and he broke the 400-meter record in the same race. He just took off because those rounds were dropping at his feet. He knew that they were meant for him. The only reason he wasn't hit is because the guy was shooting through the ventilation brick. And the brick, once the bullet hits a brick, it gets deflected and it wasn't hitting its weapon. But once that happened, the guys knew it was too dangerous to come back in to get me because he had what they believed to be a sniper location and he could see everything that was happening around the house. So they had to call for backup. We were in the Barossa Valley, which is a beautiful area, one of our premium wine growing areas. But that was about an hour and a half outside of the main city of Adelaide. So they called for backup. Our backup team was equally the other side of Adelaide. So they had to get back to Adelaide, regroup, rekit, get out to where we were. And that just took a period of time. That took the 3 hours. The guys that came in were on the ground for 10 minutes, formulated a plan, and literally put their lives on the line. They risked their lives to come in and save mine. Now, if you can get your head around this, if I had died on that day and then came back and did a review, I would say that even though I had died as a result, their choice to come in at that time was crazy. It was ridiculous. It was illogical because this guy, the offender, had a sniper location. The weapons that they were coming in with were not sufficient to completely suppress him. The vehicle they were coming in was not a bulletproof vehicle. They didn't have ballistic protection. They had very little on their side. And everybody in the briefing prior to coming in were told, we don't know whether Derrick's dead or alive. We don't know whether you're picking up Derrick or whether you're picking up a body. There's a very real chance you may be shot and injured, you may be shot and killed. One of the things they were told, and I say this with a little bit of irony and tongue in cheek, but it was exactly what they were told. They were told, if you do get shot, can you please stay close to the van because that'll make it easy for us to get you out. Yeah, that's part of the planning. You know? But every one of those guys had full knowledge that this meant they were putting their lives on the line to come in and get potentially a body. Every one of those guys stepped up to the plate and said, this is what we trained for. We want to go in there. We want to get Derrick out if we can. And so they put their lives on the line. So even if I died and they didn't come in, I would say that would have been the logical decision to make. But they did. They came in, risked their lives, and that was one of the reasons that I'm still alive today.
How many rounds were fired? I've heard 2,500, and I've heard that it was 40 plus hours. Is that correct?
Yep, 2,500 is conservative because we don't really know exactly how many police fired and we did an estimate of the cartridges in the house, so we know he fired at least 2,000. But when Star Group, we have better access to weaponry and ammunition than what the average police officers do. So they were going up to the TAC truck, the tactical truck, and they were just going, here, have these bullets. So we don't know exactly how many were fired, but it was at least 2,500 exchanged between police and the offender, and the job went on for 41 hours. It is the longest police siege in Australia in all of its history.
And only you were injured, correct?
Very greedy. Kept it all for myself.
That it's unbelievable with that amount of rounds and that amount of time that only you were injured.
And it is. And I'm the only one that had a physical injury. And this is a very important point. Everybody there was psychologically affected, right? And that is a very important point to make and acknowledge that even as Star Group, we're supposed to be the tough guys. And I say that in inverted commas for anybody who's just listening. Toughness does not stop you from being psychologically challenged, right? Yes, we deal with it. Yes, we went straight back. My guys, not me personally, but the teams, they went to jobs the next day. There were still jobs happening that they had to go to. So they had to deal with this psychological trauma and challenge. And their mate has, come within 30 seconds to death, but they still have to go out and operate the next day as if this is a job standalone, not letting this previous job affect their decisions or their actions at all. So there was psychological challenges that people had to put up with, but I was the only one who was physically injured. And it is amazing. Shooting through that fibro hut, it was pure luck that they didn't get hit. The sniper who was at the other house, pure luck that he didn't get hit. When the team came in to get me, they sent snipers into the field to lay down suppressive fire as the team came in the truck. One of those snipers had 2 bullets drop at his feet as he was on his way in. Pure luck he didn't get hit. So it was a very fortunate day. And very fortunate, and I say this in all seriousness, very fortunate I was the only one who got hit. I was able to manage it. I'm just pleased nobody else was hit.
So 41 hours, 2,500 rounds. Let's talk about how this kind of comes to a close.
Yeah. So I was on the ground for 3 hours and fully conscious for 2 3/4 hours. In the last 15 minutes, I'm passing in and out of consciousness. For the 3 hours that I was on the ground, I was controlling my mind, my body, my emotions, and managing my physiology, but also going through the thought process of, with all these injuries, I may spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. And then going through the thought process of how I might handle that, and always staying positive, always staying optimistic about the future, while still being absolutely rational about the fact that this is my life on the line and I may not actually make it out of here alive. But if I do get out of here alive, what's the future going to look like? And remaining positive and optimistic about that. The boys come in to get me. Again, they risk their lives. They pick me up. The first people to get to me, one of them said he didn't even recognize who I was. He knew who I was, but I had no blood left in my body. I was down to the last 2 units of 10 units of blood in the body. So I didn't have pigmentation in my skin. There was no color. And he said, I didn't recognize it. I knew it was you, but I didn't recognize you. Boys picked me up, taken me to the doctor and the medical team. And the medical team, this is an important thing just to focus on for a moment. The medical team treated me for 10 minutes while bullets were whizzing around their ears. They were standing in direct line of fire from where the shooter was. And if they hadn't treated me for 10 minutes to stabilize me before moving me, I would be dead. The doctor said I was 30 seconds from death at the time he got to me. So they've got me out. I've been taken away to hospital, and the siege continues now for another 38 hours. A little bit of a tangent. I think I became a hero to my mates that day. Not because I survived, not because I was shot 14 times, not because I recovered and thrived afterwards. It was a 41-hour job. They were getting paid overtime for 41 hours. I became a hero that day. It was the best payday they have ever had in their life. Even with increases in wages these days, they still had a better payday that fortnight. But they got me out. The siege went on for another 38 hours. They were in the field. And it was just at a change of tactics. Prior to this job, our tactics had been that if we've got an offender in the house, then we'll find a way to get into the house and diffuse the situation as quickly as possible, because that's what we do. We just changed our tactics to there is no other threat than him. He was the only one in the house, actually. Back half a step. At the time he started shooting me and I was dealing with all this and I was firing back into the house, his wife and 2 young children were in the house at that time. And so as I'm firing back, I had to think, if I fire back into the house and I happen to hit one of them as I'm trying to shoot at him, how am I going to feel? How am I going to manage that for the rest of my life? So I knew they were in there. But 7.5 minutes after the shooting started, I'm around and I'm dropped on the ground next to the house. 7.5 minutes later, his wife and 2 children leave, and there is a drop or a cessation in the shooting so that they can get out safely. And then once he knows they're out safely, he starts shooting again. So he was shooting for the entire time I was on the ground. Um, it continues for 38 hours after I get out, and in the end, the bosses are going, to know something, this is dragging on and dragging on. And I'm sure they were looking at the overtime bill. And so they've gone, we've got to do something to give him reason to believe that he is in danger if we decide to take action against him. So they asked a couple of Starries to get into a tractor and go and knock a hole in the side of the house that we'd be able to get gas grenades into and distract him and put him under pressure. If you have a look at some of the photos that are online, you'll see that a hole this size in a Starry's interpretation is knocked down half the side of the house. So a whole veranda collapses and there's this massive hole that's created. But it's about 3 hours after that he is worn down, and I won't say how we go about psychologically wearing them down, but he is worn down enough that he just goes, no, I'm giving up now. And he has come out. We've got him to court, and the court process just becomes the next nightmare.
So I got to ask you a couple questions from this. One, when you're on the ground, do you ever think, this is it, I'm not going to survive this? And what were your thoughts of, if you don't survive this, what did your thoughts go back to? And then two, kind of an add-on to the end of that, you don't lose your life. This guy just surrenders and gives up. Do you feel like you got cheated out of something because you got shot and injured so badly with so many surgeries coming afterwards, and this guy just walks out of the scene after 41 hours and says, I give up, it's over, King's X, I'm clear now?
Yeah, so 2 very deep questions there, and I love delving into these types of questions. So 2 very, very deep questions. The first one, am I aware that I am on the precipice of death, and how do I handle that? The answer to that goes back 5 years when I joined Star Group. When I joined Star Group, I sat down with my wife and I said, I'm going into Star Group. I may be shot and injured. I may be shot and killed. And I had a conversation with her because I wanted to make sure that she knew and was aware of the risks that we were both facing when I went into Star Group. So I may be the one who died, but my question to her was, if I die, what will your life look like? Now, that's a deep conversation, and happy to go into that conversation. We probably don't have time, but I do, at some of the work that I do, go into what that conversation looked like. So I said to her, what will your life look like? Because it's not just the impact on me, it's impact on our families, our colleagues, our team, that we need to consider prior to. And I talk about 4 different levels of taking responsibility for choice, for actions, for consequence, but then the future afterwards. And the future afterwards is something that many people don't address early. So when I said I may be shot and injured, I may die, what's your life going to look like? I then continued the conversation with her and I said, if I don't die, my injuries may be so bad that I spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. And I need you to know right now that I accept that could be a possibility. And I need you to know right now, I will find a way to make that interesting. I will find a way to be able to live with this and enjoy whatever I can. And I said, the one thing that I wanted to make sure is I'm able to interact with my children for the rest of their lives. I want to be here for their birthdays, for their weddings, for their problems, all those sorts of things. So that's the thinking I had 5 years prior to going into and being shot. So when I'm now on the ground, I'm lying there, I'm monitoring my body closing down. The blood is pooling on the ground next to me. It's just pouring out of me. Well, pouring out, slowly leaking out of me, because I'm able to control my heart rate. I'm able to control my breathing. I'm able to control panic, because I also thought of that beforehand. I knew I needed to do those things. And I knew that would slow down my rate of bleeding, but I could see the blood pooling on the ground next to me. I could feel my body closing down. My legs were getting colder. My arms were getting colder. The pistol that I was holding on to becomes too heavy, because there's no blood going to my arms to feed nerves and muscles, and that drops out of my hands. So I know my body is closing down. At 2 hours 40, and this is a police thing. I know the times because I was looking at my watch the entire time. 2 hours 40, I consciously accepted blood is probably now just going to my kidneys, to my lungs, to my heart, and to my brain. And at 2 hours 45, even my vision closed down. And it's at this point I think to myself, well, this is probably it. Even if I do get out of this alive, I will probably have brain damage because of oxygen deprivation, and all those sorts of things. But my vision closed down because there wasn't enough blood in my body to keep that vision going, and probably running low on energy as well by this point. Um, but it's at this time that when my vision closes down, instead of going to shades of grey or black, as a pragmatic copper would expect it to, my vision went to an absolute pristine white. Absolutely pristine white, no other color. And it wasn't a tunnel, it was just this absolute whiteout. And it's at that time I'm thinking to myself, okay, is this it? Is this what they talk about? Am I right there, or am I about to die? But it's also at that time that I decide I'm going to give it my last shot, and I'm going to keep on fighting. And I start moving my body the little bit that I can, just to give myself confidence I've still got something left in me. And I start speaking out loud, and I say, Derrick, don't give up. Derrick, keep on fighting. And that's when the snipers are coming in. 2 bullets drop at the sniper's feet that I mentioned before. And when those 2 bullets drop, that sniper goes, well, I'm not going to stand here and just let him shoot at me. I'm going to fire back. So he lets 2 shots go back towards the house. I hear those 2 shots, and that gives me a boost of adrenaline. And bang, my vision comes back up to absolutely perfect. I am now fired up again, but because I'm so low on blood, I'm passing in and out of consciousness. And so I'm very well aware that that being shot once, I could have died. Being shot so many times, I knew that was a huge risk that I could still die, but I'd already addressed it before with my wife. I'd already said, if I die, what's your life going to look like? So we discussed that. I accepted that was a possibility. So it wasn't a panic. It was just a process of, how do I delay it so long that I'm possibly going to be able to get to medical help, or somebody else able to get to me? And even when my vision closed down, I was not giving up. I kept on fighting. But it's not because of what I did in the moment. It's what I did before, how I prepared myself mentally, physically, emotionally. Um, and when the boys did get to me, I was still passing in and out of consciousness. And they got me to the doctor, and he stabilized me while bullets are whizzing around his ears. Does that answer that first part of the question? Do you have
It
any?
does, but it brings up another question to me.
Yeah.
When you're when you because you say you talked about this before when you joined the STAR team and all of that, so I almost wonder, do you think you wrote you being shot into existence right then?
I have been asked that question so many times. The people who are the manifestation people, they say, you manifested this shooting. You thought about it so much that you manifested it for yourself. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I have a problem with manifestation. Um, the whole concept of manifestation. Some of it is based in logical processes, but I don't think we create vibrations that bring those things to us. The whole manifestation idea is that, if I think about it enough, the world will feel my vibrations and they'll bring it to me and I'll be successful. And if you think negatively, you'll get negative stuff. And if you think positively, you'll get positive stuff. How many times have people gone, oh my God, this is going to go wrong. I'm so useless at this. I'll never be good at it. Oh my gosh, I'm actually doing it. I'm able to do this and I'm successful. But they had the negative thoughts beforehand. And the same thing about positive people. Oh my God, I'm going to be so good at this. I'm going to be positive thinking, and things go wrong. The manifestation thing in my mind, going off on a tangent for a moment, comes from the fact that we can create successes in our lives. If we think about things enough, we will notice the opportunities around us. And that's what you manifest, the recognition of opportunities. There are always opportunities around us. But if we're not looking for them, we won't see them. If you know what you're looking for, you will see those opportunities, and people call that manifestation. So I don't think I manifested myself getting shot. I more think that I thought about all the positives that could happen. I was going into Star Group. It was going to be sensational. There was going to be great things that are happening, doing jumping out of helicopters, taking on challenges, diving, shooting, all these great things. But I also accepted that the job I'm going to do has risks associated with it. Now, I can't go into this environment and go, oh, I know there's risks, but if I don't think about them, they won't happen to me. And so I just prepared myself for what I could realistically expect to encounter as a result of the choices that I made. I put myself in an environment where these things could happen. And we've only got to look back in recent history, long ago history. Um, these things are not new. Police on operational duty, on general patrols. I got into a shooting. In my early career, I got into another gun incident. I got into the gun incident where I put my thumb in the gun. I'm now going into a higher risk environment. It's stupid to think that I could manifest myself having a safe environment if I wanted to just think positively. We've got to think about the positive, but we've got to think about the negative as well, and then prepare ourselves. And I talk about preparation physically, mentally, the intellectual stuff, the processes, the procedures, the safety, but also preparing ourselves emotionally. And I think that's where I've distinguished myself in how I responded to being shot. Immediate overwhelm, emotions went high, rational thinking went low. No, I've actually thought about this. The emotions were able to come down, rational thinking was able to come up, not onto an even plane, but the closer we can get them, the more deliberate action we can take in that environment. So I don't think I manifested it, but I was well aware of the good stuff that could possibly happen, as well as the negative, and just prepared myself for managing both of them.
So before we get into human durability and your thoughts on that, we got to go back to the question of at 41 hours, 2,500 rounds shot, this guy says, I give up. We're done doing this. And he walks out. Do you ever feel, and I know the word is not cheated, but it's the only thing I can think of. Do you feel cheated that at that point he gets to just give up and it's over?
This is something that I've thought of, and I've been asked many, many times. And the question more directly that is posed to me is, don't I want revenge? This guy has just pumped 14 rounds in, well, hit me 14 times. Don't I want revenge? There is absolutely no doubt in my mind, and I know because I used to make notes of the processes I was going through during my recovery and the thoughts that I was having. And I remember I wrote one paragraph, which is pure, vicious, venomous hatred for this man who has done this to me. I don't shy away from the fact that I had those feelings. And I think we've all got to embrace the fact that we can be angry. This guy's done horrible stuff to me, and I was angry about it. But the one thing that I distinguish is that I didn't want revenge. Because if I took revenge, that would make me the same person he is, and I don't want to be that person, right? There's no two ways about it. I hated him. And in that moment where I had that rage within me, this vicious, venomous passion to hate him, if I'd met him at that time, I probably would have acted on it. So I was very fortunate that I didn't. But as I moved on, it was, I don't want to be that person. And if I'd acted on that rage, I would have become that person. The other side of it is, if we're in a firefight and I was shooting at him and I shot him and killed him, would that give me satisfaction? No, I would still feel guilt that I had taken someone's life. I'd be able to rationalize the reasons why I've done that and justify the reasons, but there'd still be this guilt sitting within me. I don't want to take a person's life if I don't have to. Um, and again, this goes back to the conscious thoughts beforehand. What choices will I be making? What actions might I be required to take? I knew that I could take that shot if I needed to. If somebody's shooting at me, if somebody's putting somebody else's life in danger, I know that I can take that shot and accept that somebody may die as a result of it. Still feel guilty that I've taken somebody's life, not enjoy that process, but be able to be comfortable with the fact that I had either saved my own life or saved somebody else's life. And I think that would have still sat comfortably with me. Do I want revenge on him now? No, not in the least. Do I feel cheated that he got out of it with absolute minor injury and then just a sentence in jail and now he walks free? He walks free just the same as you and I now. No, I don't feel cheated. I know what our legal system is like. I know what the processes are. And if I was going to get angry that he didn't get treated bad enough, I shouldn't have been in that situation where I could put myself in that environment where I was going to experience it. I've got to be able to go, he has been dealt with the best that the legal system can, and just accept that and keep moving, and just be aware that if he ever offends again, I hope I'm the one who arrests him again.
I, I understand what you're saying, but just because you know how something is doesn't mean you have to like it.
No, this is a conversation that's coming up an awful lot. There's something that the military and emergency services are now aware of, and it's called a moral injury. And that moral injury is the process should be looking after me. The process should be, and this is moral injury, particularly for this situation. It has many, many ways that it manifests in other areas, but in this situation, the system should have looked after me. The system should have been harder on that person. Why wasn't it harder? They should have looked after me. I feel hurt because they haven't done the right thing by me. And that becomes a moral injury that sits in me, and it does sit for many police officers. They should have done better by me. They should have looked after me, and this is bad. And that becomes so embedded in them that they then go into what's called embitterment. And they were so angry about this moral injury that they are now only focused on they need to acknowledge this, they need to do something more about it. Well, have you noticed that your kids are doing really well at school? They're going, I don't have time for that. I've got to. And so the moral injury becomes embitterment and then destroys their lives. It becomes the only thing they're focused on. So in my mind, he's done the wrong thing. Always going to be true. He should be punished. Always going to be true. Could his punishment have been more? Absolutely, it could have been more. It could have been way harsher than what it was. But can I affect that? Is there anything that I can affect by being angry? If I want to be that angry, then I need to find something I can do. And that might be becoming a politician and change the legislation. And if I'm not going to do that, then I need to let the system be the system and focus on making my life as good as it possibly can be. Still acknowledging that this is wrong, absolutely, validating that, but putting my focus and my energy over here. Going through my recovery, if I was worried about getting revenge, I wouldn't have focused on getting strong and having good time with my children and enjoying my life the best way I possibly could. And by doing this, it gave me the opportunity. My first focus was just to get back and interact with my kids, be able to run and hop and skip and jump with them and just enjoy life. And the better I got at this, then I started looking at going back to the police. And then I looked at going back to Star Group. And I was actually able to do that. Now, there was a lot of stuff that I had to go through with him going through court and him appealing and him being in the paper and him alleging all sorts of stuff that I have done, the police have done to him. That's all there, but I was focused on enjoying my life, knowing that this was out of my circle of control or influence. That had to be left to someone else. Do what I could, but put my energy where it was important.
You talk about all the stuff that you had to go through. It's multiple surgeries, over 2 years of rehabilitation. During that time period, through all these surgeries and all of that, of course you returned to Star, but was there ever a thought in your mind like maybe it's not worth it?
No, that thought didn't come into my mind. Um, there was a lot of doubts as to whether I would ever make it.
Okay.
Um, there were doubts as to whether initially there were doubts as to whether I'd actually walk properly again. The doctor said I may have to use a wheelchair and I may have a walking stick for the rest of my life. So there was doubts there. Once I got across that, there were doubts about whether I'd actually be able to lift any weights. My arm, very fortunately, didn't need the operations that they were predicting, and I didn't have to lose half my arm as it was, potentially going to be. So there's a lot of things that went right for me. But I always had this passion for getting back to what I loved doing. And 5 years prior to the shooting, when I spoke to my wife, and I said, if I get shot and injured, I need you to know if I don't get shot badly enough, I will want to go back to Star Group. I discussed that 5 years before I got shot. Now, I didn't anticipate getting shot 14 times, so I certainly had to make a reassessment about it at the time. But there was nothing that ever stopped me from wanting to go back to Star Group and be fully operational. There were tears. There were, fears of, will I actually be able to walk properly again? But the passion to go back to Starries was always there. Let me just put another balance in there for you. I wanted to go back there. I was always passionate about it, but I also accepted that if a member of my family didn't feel comfortable with it, my wife, my children, um, somebody in my family was really opposing it because they were scared, then that would make me reassess again because that's a different impact. If my family couldn't handle it, then I would need to say to myself, I will go and find a different passion. But there'd be a reason for it. And so
I,
that would give me
and
a
I
reason to chase another passion.
I get that, but even when you answer it like that, when you say that if someone in my family had a problem with it, I would reassess it. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't go do it. And I do
Correct.
you ever look at that and go, it's a selfish decision on my part, whether that's good or bad? It's a selfish decision on my part because you didn't say if they had a problem with it, I wouldn't go back and do it. You said I would reassess going back, which is a nice way of saying I would still go back. I would just look at it a little more deeply.
No, I genuinely mean I would reassess it. If they had a problem, case in fact, case in point, sorry. My daughter was 4 at the time of the shooting. Um, and when she got to the age of 5, I went back to work part time. Now, she got to the point where we were putting her to bed and she seemed like a happy child. Go and check on her an hour later. She's still wide awake, quietly sobbing, pillow drenched with tears. And, why is this? Because she was worried about daddy going back to work, getting shot again. Now, if that had continued, bang, I would have been out. Not a chance. I don't want my child to go through that. But I reassessed it. I went away and I got advice from psych. So I came back and talked to my wife came with me and we came back and we spoke to my daughter and talked her through it to make sure that she was comfortable with daddy going back to work and daddy was going to be taking precautions and all this sort of stuff. And she seemed to settle with it. And to the best that I could assess, she seemed to be comfortable with that conversation. And my daughter has always been, and still is to this day, able to think on those higher levels from a very early age. Um, and I got confirmation that my daughter was comfortable with it going back a few years after we had this conversation because I was back at work and we were saying goodbye to friends at the front of the house. We've got a big tree at the front of the house, and my daughter's just getting into climbing trees. And she says, Daddy, can I go and climb the tree? And I'm going, yeah, sure, no problems, but be careful because, if you're up there and you fall, you're going to hurt yourself. And it was just very off the cuff, casual type stuff. And she says, no, I want to go out on the branches. Is it okay if I go out on the branches? And I'm going, yeah, but, be careful because if you fall, you'll hurt yourself. And she says, no, I want to go out as far as I can on those branches. And I said, honey, I've given you the warning. Now, if you go out in those branches and you fall and hurt yourself, don't come crying to me. And like that, she just goes, if you get shot again, don't come crying to me. And turned and went off and climbed the tree. So it was this instant thing that came out of her, and that confirmed that she was relaxed with it. She was still well aware that it could happen, but she was relaxed in that moment. And so I genuinely mean that if it come up, I would have reassessed it. I would have sat down, talked it through, found out what the issue was. Is there something that we can talk? Is there something I could convince you of? Is there some extra information that I can give you that would make you feel more comfortable? Is there somebody we can talk to? All that assessment. And if they were still uncomfortable with it, my family was always more important than my job. It was a job. Loved it. My family was always my highest priority.
You think you worked differently when you went back?
No. Say that very, very easily. No. I was a risk assessor well before the shooting.
Of course,
I
you
went
said
back
that.
with the same level of risk assessment.
So let's talk about this concept of human durability and what you speak to people about after all of the stuff that you've been through, the surgeries, rehabilitation. You go back and you do the job you love at a high level again. Kind of talk to the audience about what human durability is and how they can put it into their lives.
So human durability is sustaining optimal performance. And optimal performance is the very best you can possibly do in the given circumstances. And this concept essentially came out of a conversation that I had with my psychiatrist immediately after the shooting. I spoke to a psychiatrist 3 months after the shooting, and that was the first conversation I had with him. And this concept came out of it, and I'll explain the concept and then go back to the conversation with the psych. So, sustaining optimal performance, the very best you can possibly do in a given circumstance. Starries are well renowned and expected to always be peak performers. No matter what we're doing, how we're doing it, how long we're doing it, we expect to perform at the peak. Now, when I got shot, if I'd tried to stay at peak performance, my heart would have been racing, I would have been pumping, I would have been trying to stand up and walk around and shoot and take on the offender and all the rest of it. 5 years prior to the shooting, when I had that conversation with my wife, I also went into a planning phase with myself. And I said, if I get shot, what can I expect to happen in my mind and in my body? My body is going to want to do one thing. It's going to want to go into panic. My mind is going to want to be calm and rational and controlled. And how do I manage that dilemma of opposite needs and opposite wants? And so I went through a thought process. If I get shot, this is what I could do as an absolutely perfect response. And this is what it might look like if it's in absolute chaos, absolute panic, not able to control my heart rate, not able to control all those things. And I said, if I happen to end up down here in chaos, how can I control my mind so that I can then control my body and get it back closer to this end of the continuum where it's near perfection? Now, I never expected myself to have perfection, but I needed to know what perfection was so that I could aim for it. But it was also this concept of, I know I won't be able to perform up there. So there were four basic things that I knew I needed to do. The first was control panic, not let panic take control of the situation. The easiest way to control panic is have some idea of what you're going to deal with, some idea of how it's going to make you feel, and some idea of the resources you have to be able to manage it. Now, for me in the shooting, that was not just the physical, logistical things that I had. It's not just the processes that I had. I also had to say to myself, how is my mind going to respond to this? 30 years ago, the training for people in the police and people, particularly in the Star, who are the tough guys, is we were taught, we are going to build you unbreakable. You won't have emotions. You won't feel anything. You'll be able to deal with whatever's thrown at you. We now know that's not possible. Okay. We are emotional beasts. Our emotions go up, our rational thinking goes down when things go out of control. And that's certainly what this was. So I had this anticipation. I needed to find a way to control panic. I also needed to be able to control shock. Body's normal response to a stressful situation, whether it's physical or whether it's emotional, I knew what my body was going to do. I knew what I needed to do to reverse that. So I needed to slow down my heart rate and I needed to slow down my breathing, because those four things would slow down my rate of bleeding. And that was a conscious thought 5 years prior to me getting shot. That was based on the previous experiences I've had. What did I do well at that time where the guy was trying to shoot us and I put my thumb between the hammer and the gun? How did I have that logical processing? What did I do at that time? What had I done before that so I was able to do that? And how could I use that learning and bring it into this situation? The other thing that I had to do was look at where I'd stuffed up. Why did I stuff up? What decisions did I make? What should I have done differently? So it's not just looking at the good stuff, it is acknowledging the fact that we all stuff up, but we can often learn more from our stuff ups if we're vulnerable enough to go, I stuffed up, I could do it better. What is it I could do better? And then bring that forward. If I ever experience something like that again, I should be doing this. And so I put that process together and then I went through visualization. I actually saw myself working through this process. Oh my God, if I get shot, yep, perfect response. That's going to look great. Okay, let me think through it again. Absolute chaos. What's that going to look like? Okay, how do I manage that? And so I'd gone through being shot in my mind many, many times. I mean, this is what we're teaching our elite athletes these days. It's what business people are starting to go through with the visualization, imagining what the interaction with clients is going to be. Imagine what it's going to be like going through a merger of your business, whatever it might be. That visualization process is what gave me the ability to stay calm and relaxed and creative within that moment of being shot.
The only thing I would disagree with you on that is, to me, goes back to the question I asked you. That to me is manifestation. When you work the scenario and you see it, you're able to manifest those reactions to the situations that happen. That's the only difference that I would say with it. I agree with you completely, but when you step by step go over it, if this happens, this will happen, this happens, this will happen, and you can get creative, I think that is part of that, goes back to that question of manifestation.
As I say, I embrace some of the thoughts behind manifestation, except for that vibration stuff. We don't vibrate things into our lives. I did manifest my ability to be able to respond to it appropriately. Did I manifest myself getting shot? I don't believe so. Yep. So, yeah, so I definitely embrace the manifest my response and my ability to control my mind and body. But I say that I knew what I was looking for and I found that within myself. I don't use the word manifestation, but in that instance, I can see where it would be appropriate for how you're describing it. So, what I like to do in most of the sessions, certainly the workshops that I run, sometimes a keynote, is I'll get a whiteboard and I'll separate it into 4 columns. And I say to people, I prepared myself for what I could realistically expect to encounter as a result of the choices that I've made and the circumstances I found myself in. But what I want to do now is find out what are the choices you've made and the circumstances you can expect to find yourself in. And what challenges and changes can you expect in the next 12 months to 5 years? And generally speaking, we're in a work environment and the business wants us to focus on work. But I say this applies to work, but it also applies to family, your love life, your relationships, your children, your sporting life, your community life. What challenges and changes can you expect in the next 12 months to 5 years? And they come up with all sorts of stuff. It starts with the cost of living. It starts with finding enough finance to be able to pay the mortgage, having babies, but because people are just coming through that development stage, and other people are saying, "Well, yeah, I'm not having babies, but I'm starting to become an empty nester," and what those challenges look like. My children getting into trouble, aging parents. And my boss. My boss might be, a hard boss to deal with, whatever reason it might be. And it's this whole range of stuff. And the second column, I then say, what are the feelings and emotions that happen as a result of these challenges and changes? And instantly it goes to negative: overwhelm, anger, fear, dread, anxiety, doubt. And then somebody further down the track will go, actually, there's excitement. Yes, I've got new children coming on. Yeah, there's a worry about it, but there's also excitement as well. And I reward people for this. I actually give away, um, how do I explain this? I give away chocolates, and I say to people, "Do you like chocolate?" And they go, "Yes." And I go, "Well, here's chocolate bullets. We've got them in Australia. We call them chocolate bullets. It's just chocolate with a bit of licorice on the inside." And so I give them chocolate bullets, and I say, "Yes," and there are 14 of them. Now that breaks the crowd. They just crack up laughing at these 14 chocolate bullets as a reward. But I give them a reward because they've changed from negative thinking with challenges and changes to there's some positives as well. And this is looking at the best and looking at the worst, acknowledging both and preparing for both. And so we'll go through and there's, pride and honor and all sorts of stuff. And we talk, negatives and positives. I then skip the third column and go to the fourth column deliberately. And it goes back to what I was saying before. What are the challenges and changes? What are the emotions? And then what are the resources we have to be able to deal with them? And this is, and I say to people, what are the things you do? What can you do? What can you do to be able to manage these feelings and emotions when the challenges come up? And it's quite often right at the top of the list is talk to my friends, talk to my family, talk to my colleagues, get professional help. And then meditate and play sport and hug the dog and get close to the kids and then it will get down to, because I'm relaxed, we're all having fun, and somebody will go, drink alcohol. And I go, yeah, let me write that down, but let's talk about that now. Okay, because this is something that we do. Everybody goes, oh, should we, shouldn't we? I don't think we should. We're talking about how do you manage stress and anxiety, and that alcohol is not good. I think we should talk about it because that is something we do. How often do we have a hard day and we come home to our partner? Let's crack a beer, let's have a gin and tonic, let's sit down, have a chat. It's something we do. It's only a negative if you're having too much. It's having an effect on your health, your family, whatever it is. But if it's something we do, let's chat about what does it look like good? What does it look like bad? If we talk about it now while it's a controlled environment, we can go, well, if it gets to this point, that's a bad thing and I need to change my habits. If you wait until you get to that point, everybody likes to defend it because they like to think they're doing the right thing. Let's talk about it back here so that when we get to that point, we go, actually, I spoke about this. It's more comfortable to talk about. And the same conversation around chocolate and food and, sugar and stuff like that. Let's have the conversation now. But then I say to people, the resources that you have are the same resources I had after the shooting. Feelings and emotions are the same that I had after the shooting. It's just the challenges are different. So now let's take a look at what I did in the shooting and how you can use that as a model to map over your challenges and changes and feelings and resources. The third column I come to at the end of the session and I say, what are the signs or the indicators that tell you that these feelings and emotions are getting too much and you need to access these resources? This is what I talk about my emotional preparation. I knew what the signs were. I knew what I needed to do. I recognized those things and I've gone, something's getting too much. I need to do X, Y, Z. I need to take time out. And in my sessions, um, I will look at a continuum of human durability being the ability to sustain optimal performance. But whenever we start something new, whether it's a new job, a new relationship, a new sport, a new driving a new vehicle, whatever it might be, there's an element of fragility to it. We don't know what we're doing. We're experimenting. We're not really sure. If we're keen and eager, we want to learn and we will move from being fragile and unsure. We will go through some problem solving. We will get some guidance and mentoring and we'll move to being resilient. Okay, resilient is I recognize there's a problem now. I know how to solve it. I will bounce back. Okay, and that's a great place to be but it's not where we want to live our lives. We actually want to get to the point where we become the master of our craft. We become the best of the best. This is the black belt in judo. This is the guru that you go to because you know this person's got the answer to everything. They've got insight and they can see you want to become that person. That's the point that you go to work and you go, I've got this. I love being at work. I know exactly what's going to happen, but I've got the answers already. And part of this comes from being able to be insightful enough to anticipate this is the sign third column, this is the sign that tells me it's going well or it's going badly, and I need to access this resource so that this emotion doesn't overtake me and this challenge becomes too big. Now, this could be emotional, but it can also be logistical too. It could be practical in your business, in your organization, or in your sport. Sporting teams love this model. Um, and what happens is you will get to be the best of the best. And I say to people, what happens when you become the best of the best? What happens when you get to the top of D grade in tennis? You become the best of the best, you go up into C grade in tennis. And what happens when you go into C grade? Best of the best in D grade, you're middle of the road. At best, you're middle of the road in C grade. So you've come back along that continuum to resilient because you're encountering new problems, better players, and you need to bounce back from that. And you need to move along to become the best of the best in C grade. And then what happens? Best of the best in C grade goes up to B grade. You're now middle of the road again. This happens not just in sports, not a sporting analogy alone. It happens when you take a step up in responsibility at work. The boss gives you new jobs. You take on a new environment. You take on a new relationship, whatever it is. Having our head around the fact that this is a normal process. We've become the best of the best. We take on a new challenge and we've got some new learning to do. Becomes a thing where we go, oh, it's actually okay to not be the guru anymore. I'm still good at what I used to do, but now I've taken on a new challenge. It's natural that we're going to go through this process. When I got shot, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing there. I didn't just go back to being resilient, I got knocked all the way back to being fragile. This is completely new. I had to do a whole heap of learning. The process of moving from fragile to resilient and resilient to durable is predictable and can be fast tracked. Moving from fragile to resilient, I'm mapping this out with my hands. When I draw it on a whiteboard or I've got it on a PowerPoint, um, there are stages at the top, but underneath, moving from fragile to resilient. Underneath, it is moving from fragile to resilient. You need coaching, you need guidance, you need mentoring, and you need to allow yourself to experiment and try things and make mistakes. Right? Because if you do that enough, you will learn how to solve problems. You'll get to resilient. When a problem happens, you'll be able to bounce back from it. As I say, really good spot to be. If you know that you can solve whatever problem comes up, that's really comfortable. But you're still waiting for things to go wrong and then go, I know how to fix it. To move from resilient to durable, sustaining optimal performance, this is where you're insightful. You know what the signs are that tell you it's going well or it's going badly. You know what the answers are and you can implement them before things go wrong. To move from resilient to durable, this is about inner confidence, inner self-belief, courage to take those steps and those chances, knowing that you've got answers before the problems happen. And it's about understanding your systems. That goes back to another model that I won't talk about, but we've all got a system of how we do things and belief in my system. It's going to be similar to your system, DJ, but I've got my own stamp on how I do things. And so we can move along there. When we take on that next challenge and we go up and we slide back, doesn't matter where you go. If you go back to fragile, you know that you're going to move faster along that continuum. If you engage with a coach, you get some guidance, you get some mentoring. If you're only at resilient, then it's just about building your confidence again and allowing yourself to experiment and try things and push it along to the point where you go, you know, I've got it. The other thing that I do want to just quickly allude to is I'll talk about two different models of resilience. And this is something new to a lot of people. Most people go, I've got a model of resilience and this will work for you no matter what you're going through. It's one model, one process. I believe there are two processes. The first one is functional resilience. And this helps us get through the day to day, week to week, things that we need to do. And there are 6 steps within that model of resilience. Okay. And this is functional. It helps us get through day to day, week to week. The second one is aspirational resilience. And aspirational resilience is the resilience we need to keep on pushing ourselves. There are 6 steps in functional, there are 6 steps in aspirational, things that we need to do. Aspirational is when we are pushing ourselves, we are passionate about something, we know it's going to be difficult, but we love it so much that we want to keep on going through it. And there are 6 steps we can take to help us to keep on going. But if we stay in aspirational too long and we're pushing ourselves, that'll lead us to burnout. Okay, and we want to avoid that. And this is third column. This is what are the signs that tell you you are getting overwhelmed by these feelings and emotions? What are the resources you need to use? The resources for that are back in functional resilience, right? Resting, relaxing, replenishing. That's not the 6 steps. That's just the overall concept. Resting, relaxing, replenishing, re-energizing, and then being able to re-engage when I've got everything back in place again. Okay, and human durability is from knowing when to move from functional into aspirational and aspirational back to functional at the right time. Now, that move from aspirational to functional may just be for 10 minutes. I've really had a stressful phone call with a client. My partner and I have just had a massive argument. I am really stressed. I need to get over here. Need to do some rest, relax, reflection, re-engaging, and get my energy back again. And then I can go back into aspirational again and keep on pushing. Have a better conversation with my partner. Okay, get my head settled around what that conversation was, and let's go back into aspirational. But it could also mean that I just need to eat my lunch away from my desk. It could mean that I need to take a week out. It also could mean that I'm pushing myself at work, but I actually want to go over here and rest and relax while I go to my child's recital of the recorder at school. It's an absolute nightmare to go to, but I want to be there for my child. And allow yourself that time to rest, relax. And then when you're absolutely engaged there and that's over, you can come back here and push yourself at work as well. But if you're trying to enjoy your child's recital while you're still over here, you're distracted, you're not fully engaged here, and it just becomes another stressful environment. We need to give ourselves permission to get over here. And it is the ability to flick from one to the other, which gives us the human durability, that ability to sustain optimal performance. And optimal performance is the very best you can do in the given circumstances. Really hard day. I want to go home and have a drink with my partner and just rest and relax. Oh, okay, that feels better. I can now go back to work the next day, re-energized, and get back into it. But if you stay in aspirational too long, you go into burnout. There are people who stay in functional too long and they go into rust out. They're not using their brain. And there are lots of people in the work environment where they go, you tell me what to do because I don't want to take responsibility. I don't want to have leadership positions. Tell me what I want, what you need me to do, and I'll do it. These are the people who are not fully utilizing their potential because they are overwhelmed. They're on the continuum. They're in that fragile state. They don't want to step up. They don't want to take responsibility for anything. And getting people's heads around that you flick between one and the other, and it's okay to take some time out for yourself. People just go, that makes perfect sense.
That I don't think you could have said it better about the relaxing, the refitting, all of that kind of stuff. I think everyone needs it in their life, and it's absolutely fascinating. This thing that you have taken that was so bad in your life and turned it into this thing that's so great that's helping other people. Let's talk about real quick where people can find you so they can learn more about this. I know you're getting ready to make a trip to the United States and stuff, so let's talk about where people can find you and learn more about this.
So obviously I have a website, derrickmcmanus.com. I'm on the socials, so and for business people, get in contact with me on LinkedIn. Just find me. I'm certainly on Facebook, which is less of a resource these days to most people. Instagram, you can see me there. But send me an email. Let's have a conversation. I don't have conversations with expectations something's going to come out of it. I will quite often just enjoy talking to someone and say, this could possibly help you. May not help you right now, may help you 6 months down the track, 12 months down the track. But let's have a conversation and see what the potential is. And I am coming to America, and people go, oh, well, you're Australian coming to America. That's going to cost me a fortune. Nah, I'll make my way to LA, and then let's talk about how I can be of service to you in America from an LA base.
Is it all Derrick McManus where they can find you on the socials and everything, or are there different names?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Derrick McManus.
Okay.
And obviously the spelling is going to be in the notes here.
Yeah.
And just knock me up. Send me a message. Let's have a conversation because I love having it. And being this is as a military and emergency services background, um, I will just say directly that I don't charge police for me coming and working with police. Um, yes, you'll cover my expenses, some travel. Again, I'll work out of LA, but you'll cover travel and accommodation and food and all that sort of stuff. But I won't charge a fee for me talking to police, because I am only standing on this earth, or sitting on this earth as it is at the moment, because of what coppers did for me. They put their lives on the line, and me being able to work with police and just share this information and hopefully empower and encourage them to go out and do their job better with more confidence. I just want to be able to pay that forward, and embrace that for myself, but also encourage it in other coppers to look after each other. That's my way of saying thank you. And I do it on a universal, a planet side. I've certainly done it a lot here in South Australia. I've done it throughout Australia. I've done it a couple of times in a couple of my tours of the US in the past. So for police, give me a buzz, get me over. Love it.
Well, it's this has been amazing. This is a fantastic story. It was a little hard getting together with this and finding out all the initial messaging back and forth, but Susan helped out with that a lot, so I appreciate it to her. And you have a fantastic story. I'm honored that you came on here and told it, and I'm proud of the work that you still do in that law enforcement environment. Guys, you know where you can find Derrick. Let's talk about where you can find me. As always, you can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast. And you can find me on YouTube, where all these conversations are in video form, at the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. But your one-stop shop, it's going to be dtdpodcast.net. That's going to have audio, video, pictures of Derrick throughout his career. We're going to try and get the video uploaded of the incident that we talked about today. We're going to try and figure all of that out, but it will be there. He will have his own episode page, and you can find out everything that we're doing on the show, what's coming up, what's we've been behind, and we've even started adding a new blog in for each episode. So make sure you go check that out, dtdpodcast.net. Now, let's talk about the guy that makes this happen, my buddy Hoot over at Nomadic Research. I wear the shirts every week. If you want to just be the coolest looking guy or girl wherever you're at, nomadicresearch.com. That's going to be your people that you're going to. Hats, shirts, hoodies, backpacks. I keep talking about this bag that they sent me that I took on my trip that was absolutely fantastic, durable, and you can start your adventure with their clothing and their items at nomadicresearch.com. Make sure you go check them out, because they make this show happen. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Just make sure that you check this out. Get a hold of Derrick. Let him know what you're doing. Let him know how he can help you out. Everything will be on the episode page, and all of his links will be there. So make sure you go check that out. That's going to be it. That's Derrick. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.